Welcome to the Gut Mind Collective podcast, a show that helps busy women develop sustainable, nourishing health habits so you feel calmer and more energetic. I'm your host, Maren Paget, sharing guided meditations, gut mind health hacks, and interviews to inspire you to put yourself first and lead a purposely healthy life. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Jen Parker, who is an empowerment life coach that helps big-hearted women prioritize time for themselves without compromising what's important to them or sounding like a nag. Welcome, Jen.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Maren. How are you?
I'm very well. It's awesome to have you here. I really can't wait.
Excited.
I can't wait to dive into this topic, prioritizing yourself without feeling guilty, because I am sure that most big-hearted women are empathic and they are definitely probably needing this. So we'll do a little dive deep with a few quick questions, and then we'll get stuck into the real depth of the conversation. So, Jen, what food do you enjoy the most?
I like pasta. Absolutely. Hands down. It's one of my favorite things to eat. I think it's that real comfort food. I think especially sort of around this time where it's getting a little bit cooler, a nice spaghetti bolognese is probably one of my favorite pasta dishes.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it is definitely. Yeah, it's getting chilly, and pasta's it does warm the cockles of the heart. So, what would be your favourite season?
Well, I'm based here in Queensland, so I would say that autumn, so the season just after Easter, there's something in the air that I always just feel like anything and everything is possible. I've always felt like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of the weather where you can go out and enjoy long, big hikes without sweating too much, because Queensland can get incredibly hot.
Yeah,
So
and
I would
humid too.
say,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm in, Ipswich, but anything more up north, it gets incredibly humid. So autumn definitely is my favorite season.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I'm born in autumn, so I love autumn and the colours that go on the trees, and and the way the light refracts through a leaf as well, and you can see the veins, and it's pretty cool. Thank you for that. So I ask every guest what their number one self-care ritual is.
Yeah, such a great question. I think for me, self-care of like what I really enjoy the most can change depending on where I am. But I really like to do yoga, and I really enjoy practicing that daily. And even if it's not a very, because sometimes we can sort of say we don't have any time, and even if I just have 10 minutes, so I would sort of, if I can do that, or just some sort of just connecting back to myself is really important for my self-care. And I love to go for long walks as well. Yeah, I feel like it's really not always listening to anything, but just sort of listening to your own thoughts, not getting looped on them too much, but just going out, being out in nature. There's something that is very nourishing about that practice. So I think those two things, hands down, are my favorite. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. You sound like my kind of girl. Yeah, nature is an amazing way to cleanse the soul and just spark awe, and going for a nice long walk. You're just really present if you don't have the headphones on. And yoga, I mean, yoga's got an amazing way to really bring you back to yourself. Sometimes you just have to surrender as well.
Yes, which I think we struggle because we've really been conditioned to believe that having this badge of busy is a great thing, but it's not. And so when we're actually saying, oh, I'm allowing myself to prioritize my time, we've been believed for women that, oh God, that's selfish.
Mm.
I can't do that. I'm a mum. But even if it's 10 minutes is better than not doing it. And afterwards you feel such a better person, and
Mm.
really how you feel in yourself and how others are going to, that they'll feel it as well.
Absolutely. And when you develop a practice or a rhythm, you often notice the absence of it more so than the presence. I've noticed. So
Mm.
yeah.
So true. Absolutely. Because sometimes when things are going well, we're like, oh, I don't have to worry about doing the meditation or going for that walk or doing that thing that makes me feel a better person. And then when you stop doing it, it's often too late. And then that's when you may be experiencing feelings of anxiety. So those physical sensations, and
Mm.
just feeling like you're caught in this negative thought pattern that is not helpful for you.
Mm. Absolutely. Oh, I resonate there. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom about those, three little snippets. You have had a really interesting career. You were a social worker before you transitioned into what you're doing now, and you found yourself like dealing with some pretty complex, emotionally draining and kind of tough situations. And you recognized that you were probably compromising your own self-care as well. Can you just tell us a little bit more about your journey from then until now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me at that particular point in time, there were many reasons why I made the decision to actually leave that career and actually start my own business as an empowerment and mindset coach. And really, the universe often sends us little messages, and we're not always wanting to um, listen. And my body was telling me all of these things. And I am a very big hearted person. So it affected, because I was at that particular point in my life, I took on a lot of people's narratives. So often when you're working with very challenging clients, they will be projecting what's
Mm.
happening to them. But also, you're working in environments that are very demanding, very stressful, often with limited resources and very high expectations.
Mm.
So when you are a very big-hearted person, you have a feeling and a belief that if I don't get this done, that's a reflection on me. I must be a
Mm.
bad worker. It must be, you know, and time management obviously does come into it. However, it's not black and white. You are dealing with people who have many shades of grey, and things are never straightforward. You might go, right, today I'm going to do this, and then all of these more urgent tasks come to the forefront, so you have to prioritize that. So there were many parts of the job that I loved, but I think also when I'm really sort of thinking about it, um, it was really hard leaving my kids. I had to leave them very early in the morning because I started at 7:30 in the morning, and I always like to start a little bit earlier, so I just knew what was happening and I just wasn't going in there all rushed. I was sort of
Mm.
taking my time, having a look and seeing what is happening for the day, and that just helped me get started. But doing that, I was compromising my time with my children, and I
Mm.
was having, any mum who's trying to get their kids ready, it can be really quite demanding,
Yeah.
and things don't always happen how you feel, and we'll go into that a bit more. But that was really hard for me, leaving them early. And I felt like we are, on this, you know, we're only given one opportunity in our physical body. So, and, children, you want to create these memories, but I knew that I wanted to do something else. So when I made that decision to actually leave, and I remember being out in nature and life coaching literally popped in my head. And I think that is not a coincidence. I think it came to me for a purpose. And the thing that I really love about coaching is coaching has helped my whole outlook on my life. So sometimes we go into careers and we're not actually walking the talk. When I actually started learning about all of these beliefs that I had, things, that, we call them sort of, childhood wounds and things, and really going deep, diving in, it was it was hard, first of all. Change is hard, and when we're really uncovering, but I have changed how I feel about myself. And also, when you start noticing how your children are acting, keep in mind, I'm still a mum who, they still fight, my two boys. So I just want you to know I'm not a perfect person. But when you start hearing how my older boy is supporting, that is priceless. And so it has gifted me so many more opportunities. And I get to work with people who are ready to take action in their lives and who want to go deeper in a transformative way, which coaching really allows, because you're giving them space. You're not going in there to fix it. And I think sometimes when I first started, I did struggle because I got so, you're really taught about sort of getting so in depth in the narrative of what's happening behind. But that was holding me back. And now it's supporting my beautiful clients for, okay, you've got these things that are holding you back, and giving them an awareness so they go, oh, okay, well, that's not even my belief, So it's been so powerful doing this type of work. And I'm very honored and so grateful to be working with such beautiful, inspiring women. Yeah, I love it.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, it's interesting how our own journeys, if we have one path and then go in a different direction, that initial path is often a bit of a healing as well, and you can then support other women to go through their own healings, or your own ideal client. If you're working with men, that's fine, but this podcast is for women. So but yeah, that healing place, it's like a birthplace of transformation for the individual first, to then magnify that out to the world. It's a wonderful experience. So you now work with women who want to put themselves first, but they're kind of not sure how. And what do you actually love the most about your journey now?
Yeah, so what is really powerful about what I get to do every single day is it's really showing women they actually have all the answers within. And when you often ask these questions, sometimes we go in and we, if there's silence, people feel like, oh, well, you must be thinking this. But often our subconscious mind needs time to process that. And so when you see that change in how their body is holding themselves, and they're connecting down, and sometimes we go, yeah, I know all of these things. I know I need to do all of these things, sort of like the diet and fitness industries. People need that support, but it's still one of the biggest booming industries because people feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me. Oh, I need this. And so things are changing around those industries because, about intuitive eating and listening to what this is really about. And so what I really love is supporting women know their own answers. Because sometimes, it's like having, a friend, and you see some of the things and you sometimes ask them that one powerful question. Oh, I've never seen that before. But it's funny how we can always see it, but sometimes it's asking those questions, and really those simple, so-called simple questions.
Mm.
And there's power in that. And people go, because it's never about making assumptions. So it's really going into that. And then people are like, oh, yeah. So it's giving people the tools, which, social work did teach me about, but it's going to
Mm.
that next level of, if you want this changes in your life, you're actually going to have to do something. You can't just think it and,
Mm.
that it's going to manifest. Because sometimes we think, okay, if I'm going to win $1 million, I'm going to win $1 million, it's all like that. Well, what are you going to
Yeah.
do? You still have to take action in your life. And so that's what I teach women about, and about it's not selfish to prioritize yourself. It's so, I think sometimes when people are hearing prioritizing myself, well, I've got kids, I can't prioritize, time for myself. That would be, I'm too busy, and I'm doing that in little inverted
Yeah,
commas.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean leaving your child crying. It means that you're understanding where your time wasters, or you're saying yes to things that are not really aligned to you. And when you actually go, I'm getting this feeling that this doesn't feel right, that's you're becoming more aware of that feeling in your body, that actually doesn't feel good. And that's
Mm.
when you know your values and what's important to you. And when you know that, then if something doesn't feel right, is it your ego talking, okay, which is more of a fear based, or is it
Mm.
your intuition saying, you know what, I think you just need to say no, even if there's going to be repercussions in that.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And I can imagine that, like, I don't have time would be a common myth that women might encounter within themselves when it comes to, prioritizing themselves. Have you kind of come against any other myths in your work, when women are wanting to take action to, level up or change their life, but, don't have the time, that sort of thing? Is there any other myths that you have
yeah.
encountered?
I think something that often the self-development industry can do that can often make people feel worse is often this concept about thinking positive. Just think positive,
Mm.
and I talk about it with, we do create our own reality, but it's also understand where you are. So if you're feeling in yourself, oh, everyone's doing so well, and oh my gosh, I'm feeling a bit crappy. I'm feeling not good. I'm not feeling positive. I've tried to think it. Then you're denying that experience. So,
Mm.
what it's really important to understand is sometimes we need to also acknowledge the feelings that we're experiencing, good or bad. So, sometimes if something doesn't feel good, we label it as a bad feeling. But what is that really about? It might be that you're experiencing a bad feeling because you're neglecting your self care.
Mm.
And self care, um, self care is very loosely used. It's often thought of just a bubble bath or something that you only do behind closed doors. But true self care is practiced every single moment, and it's looking after your uh, body. So doing things like movement, uh, eating, the right types of foods and getting support there, able to listen to your body when you're starting to experience overwhelm and stress and exhaustion.
Mm.
It's also about your mind. So when in the industry keeps saying to think positive, it's saying, well, you know what? It's my time of my month, and I know that this time of month I feel like this, or I'm feeling really low in myself because I get really triggered by when this person says something. So that might be telling me I've got work to do, rather than it's the other person. So it's
Mm.
really sort of going back. And the other part of self-care is the inner work, the soul. And people might go, whoa, that's too woo-woo for me. How I would really talk to people about spirituality is it's really finding your way back to yourself and believing in yourself, listening to those little signs that your body is telling you that something doesn't feel right. You're actually living a life that you want to create, not what your
Mm.
parents say, not what the people in your workplace tell you, not what your extended family tell you, or the people who are in your support network. You're doing what you want, and you feel, yes, I know it's really hard. Sometimes we know that, especially when you're, in business, it's not an easy path,
Mm.
but you know that this was your path to do. So it's really just unpacking those things, in understanding what self-care is. But yeah, I sort of went in a bit of a tangent, but
That's
this
okay.
whole concept about, positive
I think
thinking, it's
self-care is a
not
bit of a
just
squiggly,
it
squiggly
can be,
tangent.
absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I definitely resonate with what you're saying about positivity. I saw on the Dare to Lead podcast by Brene Brown, she recently had a lady on there talking about toxic positivity and how if you're not actually acknowledging the feelings, you're then suppressing them, and it further creates that cycle of
Mm.
them showing up. So, you do need to acknowledge and feel those feelings. We did a podcast on this to lean into those sensations because, if you like it's uncomfortable sometimes, those or those uncomfortable sensations, whether it's words or actions, it does hurt. But it's quite often, I think, the ego that's getting bruised, really, because the soul is pure, and
Mm.
it's the ego that's really reacting, I guess. But there can be unconscious trauma and unconscious reactions too. So if you are just able to feel the feels and then observe if you can, but if there are layers of trauma there, I think splitting from or kind of removing yourself from that situation and witnessing can be a bit difficult. Do you have like any tools or strategies that you can offer our listeners if they've identified that they want to prioritize their own well-being, but the guilt is still coming up? Like, how can they take that first step and pencil in them
Mm.
first without feeling guilty?
Yeah. I think the very first thing is, you don't know what you're compromising if you don't even know what's important to you. And often we think we know what our values. We sort of go, oh yeah, I value, loyalty and honesty and things, but it's going deeper than that. And I think some of the things that I've done with my clients is they what happens sometimes is when we're big-hearted, we struggle to put boundaries or say no, so we retreat. And so by retreating, instead of being honest and transparent, how that comes across possibly to the other person is, this person hasn't texted me back. What's going on? And there might be reasons. You might be experiencing feelings of anxiety, whatever, but it could be that something doesn't feel right because it's to do with actual values. So before you sort of understand all of these other things about self-care, it's really unpacking your values. What's
Mm.
important to you? And it's also it might be going back in the last week when something didn't feel right. What was the reason it didn't feel right? Really go into that. Okay, what was the reason that didn't feel right? What did I not feel comfortable about? Okay. And often when we're big hearted, we might be saying, oh, this always happens to me. Why do people keep taking advantage of me? And it's really hard to swallow because we think, obviously, it is the other person and they see your kindness and love, but it's also about, or we could be enabling certain behaviors of people that is not actually helping them. it's, you know, sometimes it can be, quite detrimental. So I think sometimes the tools that I would suggest is really understanding what's important to you, understanding where something didn't feel right in the last week. Okay. And then as sometimes we say we don't have time, but it's looking at really, okay, what are things that are not lighting me up, or can I delegate? Or when people go, oh, I do everything around the house, plus I work. Well, have you spoken to your, that open communication? Have you spoken to your partner? Have you got some extra help to help you? Support. Because people are sometimes complain about their situation, but they're not going to make change. And so sometimes people say, I'm a single parent. I can't, I don't have any time for myself, but they might have the times when their child is at, their parent, the other parent's home.
Yeah.
That might be the opportunity to do other certain tasks. But it's also about integrating. How do you integrate self-care into your, busy life? So what I probably would suggest is sometimes it's just waking up a little bit earlier than you would normally, because even if it's 10 minutes, start the day where you're not, you want to start the day at your best performance. And, so it might be starting the day 10 minutes earlier. It's developing a morning routine, but it's also being realistic, because sometimes you see these people and they're like, oh, I'm doing all of these things. One, they have lots of help. Their partner may not have a job where they're working for someone else, so they have that flexibility. So when you see someone, just understand that you don't know all of their situation, because it's easy to compare. Wow, that they've got it all together. No one has it all together. So the strategies, what's important, waking up a little bit earlier than you would normally. And if you think, okay, maybe just a 10-minute workout, and people go, oh, what's the point of doing 10 minutes? If you did that every single day, then you're going, okay, I'm ready for a bit more. I want to do longer. And I'm going to, work out ways that I can make this happen. So we can all do it. It's just, where do you have to let go of some of the other tasks in your life that you're holding on to?
Absolutely. And yeah, doing a bit of an inventory is a great idea, really, but bringing it back to your core values. So, if I do value X, how does that show up in my life? And what does it look like to me to be living that? So, yeah, that's definitely great, great tips here. So, and I mean, if you're getting up 10 minutes earlier and doing a workout, you're also getting that awesome endorphin release. So, you naturally feel better and clear headed. And do you personally meditate as well, or is yoga
So
more your vibe?
I love my yoga. I definitely do yoga most days. I've been getting more into my meditation, where I have a bit of a busy mind, like I think a lot of women. So I do it in ways that feel right to me. So that's where going for a walk and just sort of being still, that helps me. And even when I know I've got a lot of things to do, before after I've taken the kids to school, etc., I'll come home and I'll just do a 10-minute meditation. So that is something that just helps me when I'm, starting to feel like that. But it shouldn't be waiting for that. It should be, even if it's just sort of a few minutes of stillness, just understanding what that is. I usually do that when I'm doing like a little meditation for my kids at night, and sort of, practice what you preach. And so I sort of sit there and just be. So yeah, that's where sort of I look for the little opportunities, but it doesn't always happen.
Yeah. And how old are your children, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I've got two young boys, so
Hmm.
7 and 4.5.
Oh, they're little ones. Yeah, they really, they need you at any stage, but I think, that's a time where the independence is still, they're still not fully independent and yeah,
Mm,
really needing mama. So yeah, it is a juggle when you have children and you need to do something. I think, like you said, just knowing what you value and then prioritizing it somehow, like just putting it in your diary. And I find accountability is often what people need the most. And so,
mm,
even if you've got like a Facebook accountability buddy or something, or a message accountability buddy, just makes it easier. Like each Monday, I get up at 5:30 in the morning because I have to meet a friend at 6:30 for a walk. So it's about a 15-minute walk from my house down to where I go. And initially, it was, especially in the daylight savings time, it was like a real stretch to get up at that time. But I know how good I feel after that chat that we have and, the walk. And it's a longer walk. So, I do a little bit more than I usually do. And it's a great way to start the week. You just feel really invigorated. But it did take a bit of pushing of myself to do that. And I think if you that intrinsic motivation is still building and you're still growing that, I think the accountability is one way.
yeah, absolutely. I agree. Because sometimes just having someone, and that's what, coaching's really helpful for, because often just having someone be there and say, how is that going? Or you're wanting someone in your partner to keep you accountable is super important. Yeah.
Mm, absolutely. Do you have any final pieces of advice to offer our listeners, like for putting themselves first? Or do you think we've covered it
Yeah.
off?
Yeah. Um, I think it's really important to understand that self-care is not selfish. Um, Self-care is so needed, because when we are looking after all aspects of ourselves, we are going to show up better. We're going to feel better about ourselves, but also it's looking about how that is going to influence and affect other people in your life. If we're a mother that continues to step in and keep doing things for everyone else, then what do our children believe the role of motherhood and women, being a woman, is all about? Do they have an
Mm,
expectation that someone's always going to pick up after them? And I think it's just how we have been conditioned, that we think, we don't have time. I've got to do all of these things. And that is something I'm really passionate about, is just teaching women that it is not selfish, and actually knowing how to communicate to women, to knowing how to communicate to the other people in your life.
mm,
So sometimes when we're a big-hearted person, we want to say no, but we're afraid of being judged, or we're afraid of not being liked, or they're going to think I'm a bad person. But that's more about their journey and their narrative, and often we just don't know how to do that, because no one has really taught us those things. So I think it's really important to understand. I've sort of gone off on a tangent, but
no, not at
it's
all.
really important to understand that it's not selfish, because our children are watching what you're doing. They'll notice that, okay, mum does a bit of they won't know it's called self care.
No.
Mum does yoga, and mums having more conversations about, what's going on and being open and transparent with those things, age related, etc.
Mm.
But they start noticing, and they will pick up on those things and understand how they treat themselves.
Mm.
If we look in the mirror and we keep saying, oh gosh, I look ghastly, so big and, fat, using such horrible language,
Mm.
and we have young, people who are watching, and we're saying, oh, you're beautiful, but we're not demonstrating that.
Mm.
How can they truly love and accept themselves when we don't? So we have to do the work ourselves first, and then that's when we start noticing the biggest things in society changing. Yeah.
Mm.
So we can,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I think there's sort of the, um, because it's obviously like a big topic. So I
Yeah.
think that would just be a snippet of what I would sort of leave people with. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. And I mean, boundaries are so important. However, if you don't have the emotional vocabulary or you're building it to communicate your boundaries in alignment with your truth and what you value, that's even a learning process. So, and that's where self-compassion comes into it too, being very kind to yourself. Like, I'll regularly praise myself. It's always in the third person, I've found, and I'm like, well done, you've just done so well, you just folded all of that washing. I hate folding and washing, and no one
Yeah.
does it. I've outsourced the cleaning, but folding and washing I still have to do it. So, if I knock it over, it's like, well done, like, celebrate, yay. And
Yeah.
just
Yes.
when you build that internal dialogue within your day-to-day goings and happenings, it starts to become a program, and it's rewiring that program. So, so boundaries and are definitely important, and finding way showers like yourself, or other people who teach how to communicate boundaries as well, is a really good way. Like, I love listening to Brene Brown. She's just so amazing. And as a social worker, I'm sure you can resonate with what she says about wholehearted living. So thank you so much for sharing those very sage pieces of advice, Jen.
Oh, my
So
pleasure.
so I ask all guests, what would be one like mantra or quote or affirmation that you use in times of challenge?
Yeah. I think something that has really helped me and many of my clients is that, it's the map is not the territory and perception is projection. So it's just understanding that the world is happening out here and how everyone perceives the world differently, right? So sometimes when we're feeling, you know, we have all this stuff happening, it's just understanding, well, how are they are perceiving it differently. It's not your responsibility to fix it, but it's helped me understand that if I don't quite understand where someone's coming from, I'll
Mm,
go back to that sort of framework that everyone sort of perceives. So it doesn't even mean that that's how they perceive. And when you're using those words, well, how are you perceiving the world? I have perceived this situation as very hurtful. I've perceived this, so you're putting it into, this is how I've perceived
mm,
and interpreted a particular experience. So that has really helped me understand. And it's also understanding that, yeah, I'm just going to say another one, but I think that's enough for giving people a bit of an idea that
mm,
the world's happening out here, and you are going to interpret that determined on where you are feeling in your
mm,
emotional state, the resources that you have at that particular time. It's also to do with understanding about your values and your beliefs. So all of those things will filter down, and often find that, in a big group situation, we all perceive an event very differently.
Mm.
If we're already feeling this is going to be a really good event and we have that viewpoint, of course it's going to be. If we have a viewpoint when we first wake up in the morning, oh, it's going to be a crappy day. It's going to be a crappy day because that's where we focus our energy. That's also where we're going to start seeing those results. So,
Mm.
yeah, that's powerful too.
Oh, it is. I've been experimenting this last week with, so I interviewed another guest and was on a rabbit hole on her blog, and she was kind of, setting your intention is the essence of this blog, setting your intention in the morning. And so as soon as I wake up, I think today I choose to experience, and then whatever it is. And then whenever a trigger occurs or something, there's a perceived reality. Just reciting that and remembering that you're choosing to
Mm,
experience whatever it is. And it really does help set your day up. Like, I'm definitely experimenting. I'm trying to do like a 42-day experiment to see if that focus on that single thing for those, 6 weeks did result in an X change in mindset. And yeah, I mean, I'm by no way perfect either. I've very openly shared that, anxiety has been a part of my life. So, when the negative Nancy's kick in, it's like those little gremlins, as Brene would call them. It's like, go away, gremlins.
mm,
Acknowledging the gremlins, but then, just, yeah. So I do love that one about, it's perception, not reality.
mm. Yeah, and I love that,
Fantastic.
about sort of choosing, because we make a choice every single day of how we are actually showing up and interacting with ourselves and our environments around us. So we have a choice on how we're going to exchange that. And it may be something that, you know, I think that sounds like a great thing for people to do, sort of an intention where every day they are choosing how they're going to sort of, what's their words. So that can be really powerful when we're sort of feeling like other stuff will always keep coming. But then it's just going back to sometimes that mantra of, well, what am I choosing today to experience? It can be, yeah, super powerful. I love that too.
Yeah, I'll let you know how the experiment goes.
Yeah,
The end of the
yeah.
42 days. Awesome. So would you like to share where our listeners can get in touch with you to find out more about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on www.realvisionlifecoaching.com.au. So you will find my website to have, how you can get in contact with me. I do one-on-one coaching, but I also do workshops, meetups, different events and things like that. So that would probably be if you're wanting to actually know more and you're an action taker.
Mhm.
And my social media handles are Real Vision Life Coaching.
Beautiful. And we'll pop links in the show notes as well. So, yeah. Thank you
Awesome.
so much, Jen, for your time.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've had so much fun today, Mary.
Yeah, it's great. I've really enjoyed getting to know you over Insta and just connecting more. And yeah, I really look forward to, deepening that connection as well.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's been so good.
Awesome. We trust that you've enjoyed this episode of the Gut Mind Collective podcast. Be sure to subscribe using your favorite pod player. You can catch us on Google, Spotify, Apple, and you can also visit us over at thegutmindcollective.com. Goodbye for now.